Welcome back to Next Steps Career Corner, the podcast where we explore real life career stories, practical strategies, and inspiring insights to help you navigate your next move with confidence. Today's guest is someone who truly embodies empowerment and transformation in the workplace, Keri-Lynne Shaw, founder of the Salary Bump. Keri-Lynne is a former chief people officer who turned career strategist, helping professionals own their worth, confidently negotiate their salaries, and design fulfilling careers they love. With years of HR leadership under her belt, KL brings a unique perspective to the table, one that blends deep organizational insight with a passion for helping individuals unlock their full potential. So, in this episode, we'll be diving into what holds people back from asking for more, how to prepare for high stakes salary conversations, and what it really means to take the driver's seat in your career. Whether you're negotiating a job offer, thinking about a raise, or simply feeling stuck, this conversation will give you the tools and confidence to make your next move with purpose. So let's get into it. So hi, Keri-Lynne. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm sorry with sexy DJ voice, but it's such a pleasure to be here. I'm going to plug my laptop in. I'm so sorry.
No worries. So let's talk a little bit about your career first. So tell me, what made you make that major pivot from chief people officer to founding the Salary Bump? Tell us that story.
That's an interesting one, actually. For 10 years, I have been a professional coach. I became a coach specifically in my role in HR to help people unlock their potential and guide them in a different way. And I never thought I would own a coaching business. That wasn't my plan, or most of my cohort, that was their plan. So I really didn't think about it. But as I was looking for my next chief people officer role, and I kept coming in second, I was thinking, is the universe sending me a sign? Because part of that 10 years, what I did on the side was help a lot of people in my personal network. So people would come to me constantly and be like, hey, my boss. Hey, my boss just put me on a PIP. Hey, my company's jerking me around, telling me I'm going to get promoted, and they keep promising and it never is coming to fruition. Or my kid just graduated college, or hey, can you look at my resume? And hey, I want more money. And as I was going through that, I was having the most fun I've ever had with the negotiation and realizing that I'm really good at it. So, and in my career as an HR leader, I watched people really struggle in 3 areas: networking, interviewing / storytelling, and negotiating. And I just woke up one day and I was like, my company's going to be called the Salary Bump, and I'm going to help people unlock their potential. And I'm going to help them negotiate the packages that they deserve. Because I sat on that side of the table, I also was like, I bring something really unique, and I want to impact the world. And I have a big mission, which is to do my part to close the gender and racial pay gap. So I do work with men as well, but women tend to be more attracted to me, I guess. And so I woke up one day and I was like, I'm doing this. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how hard it was going to be, nor how scary it was going to be, nor how fearful I was going to be also of failing and putting myself out there. And then what if it doesn't become a viable business? And how am I going to replace my C-suite salary? And all the things that truly kept me up at night. And I went through it was a really interesting journey to get to where I am today. But I couldn't have also done it without the help of 4 coaches that I hired. So yeah, it's been a beautiful journey, and that's what's brought me here today, talking with you.
Oh, we could have so many conversations about entrepreneurship. That's another podcast. So was there a moment in your career when you realized people needed support in negotiating their worth? Is there a specific story you have about that?
Yeah, it's my story. I didn't do it. I didn't do it for almost 2 decades. It started with my very first corporate job. So I sold cars to pay for college, and I was just bringing in cash, right? It was just fun, and it was really interesting. Well, when I got to my first corporate job, I knew nothing about corporate. And I remember they were relocating me from Arizona to New York. And They were paying for all of my moving costs. They were bringing movers in, packing, unpacking. They were doing my closing costs and everything. But they also sent me a check for $42,000. And I remember calling my dad and be like, Dad, like this can't be right. He's like, no way, it's not right. You better not cash it. I'm like, yeah, that must be an extra zero. He's like, yeah, don't spend it just in case. And in my mind, I didn't, first of all, know that I could negotiate. Then when I realized, oh, I could, I didn't know how. And then on top of that, I was always a little bit uncomfortable and maybe even a bit fearful that what if they pull the offer, or what if they think I'm more interested in the money than I am the job. And like my career, my growth was really important to me. It wasn't about the money, like literally it wasn't. And I used to say it in an interview, like, oh, like so bad. I would never recommend anyone does that. But I saw then in my role in HR, interviewing thousands and thousands of people, I watched people do it really badly, not at all. And I took notes with the ones that did it really well. And then I translated that to my own career and was able then to double my package multiple times in my career. And since then, being able to bring those tools and scripting and confidence to help people show up in something that is truly uncomfortable, and that bleeds over to every aspect of their life, not just a negotiation for a job offer. It could be you're negotiating with your kids, you're negotiating on where we're going to dinner, you're like how can you remove the emotion and bring facts, and how can you show up in a way that's honors who you are and your worth and your value.
Yeah. So what are some common myths or fears that you hear about salary negotiation? Like when you talk about you saw folks do it badly or not at all, what do you think are common ideas that people have about salary negotiation?
I think it's more around your relationship to money. So many people have limiting beliefs in life, right? I'm
Mhm.
not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not attractive enough, name it. There's also limiting beliefs around money, and those are things like money doesn't grow on trees. Um, there's a greed aspect to it, filthy rich, depending on how you grew up and your relationship or your parents' relationship to money. Your socioeconomic position also has an influence on whether or not you're deserving, whether you have scarcity versus an abundant mindset. So these beliefs are deep in our core. Sometimes there's guilt around money. I have felt that myself over the years, like, well, I have everything that I could ever imagine. Why? Is it right that I want more? Is it right that I'm looking, to invest in a retirement home or multiple homes, or buy the car that I really want to buy? Or is it too ostentatious? Or, what will other people think? Will they think that I'm, being showy? Or so there's a lot of different relationships to it. So establishing and understanding what your relationship is and where that comes from, and then really unpacking what is it that, like, what is the relationship you want to have with money, and what are your dreams and your desires and your goals. So creating generational wealth is something that was really important to me. So how can I create that for my daughter and create more transparency around money for her? My parents are wonderful, but don't give me a lot of transparency to what do I do if this happens? How do I navigate? How do I manage? Part of that came from I lost my husband when my daughter was 3, and I think the money. I was then the sole provider and thought, this is I am solely responsible for her. We didn't have a lot of life insurance, and it changed my relationship to money at that moment. It also made me have a different hunger and drive to be able to provide all the things that I wanted and we wanted to provide for her and for us. And my dreams just got bigger. And, I'm still working daily on my relationship to how not to feel guilty about wanting more, or I'm going to buy a Chanel bag. Why not? Or, my dream car has always been a Porsche 911. And I look at them all the time. I'm like, oh, that would just be like, no, I deserve it to have that if I want to have that. So, yeah, it's just interesting how also your goals change. And one other interesting thing around money is also to people also sometimes have fear around having it, or like establishing where am I spending, and having fear around looking at their bank account, and actually sitting down and really understanding it. There's some amazing, amazing financial people out there who can like truly be your partner in this. You don't have to do it alone. You don't have to fear what's behind it. You just have to unpack it.
Yeah. And it is very interesting when it comes to the greed side of it, because I grew up with that. If I wanted to make more, I was being greedy, right? And I remember having a conversation. I was very early in my career. I'd been an executive assistant, and then I moved up to an associate role.
Mm.
And I wasn't sure. And I remember talking to a colleague who had been a team lead in her previous roles, and I had a very transparent conversation, like, I'm making this much. Is this okay? And so having those transparent conversations with a mentor or people you trust can also give you an idea of where you are, because HR has their levels usually, right? The bigger the company, they have them, and you might fit within that range. Where you are in that range could change. And I didn't know. I was very young. I was in my 20s. I'm like, where is this okay? Is this comparable? And because it was a new role, it was very interesting. But I ran into that anytime I got a new job. I was like, yes, I just accepted. It took me a long time to start negotiating and asking for more. And sometimes it's not all about the money. Sometimes there are other perks and benefits, right, that you can ask for.
Yeah, but they all have value as well, right? So
Yes.
it's so interesting because one of the things that, as a former chief people officer, creating transparency around your compensation philosophy is something I believe really strongly in helping people understand where they fit, because we haven't normalized this conversation around money. Like, you don't go to a party and be like, hey, Stephanie, what do you make? But you could ask, like, Stephanie, you're a director at JP Morgan. I'm also in finance. I'm looking to make my next move. Would be so helpful if you could give me an idea on do you know what the ranges are at director level at JP Morgan or at VP level? I'm looking to, consider a move, or you want to go from one industry to another and talk to people in those industries. You don't have to ask them what they make, but could you tell me more about the package? Packages are also really important, because normally what happens is when you get on a call with a recruiter, they ask you, what are your salary expectations? Well, there is a long list of things beyond salary that make up your package that include things like equity. So the salary could be super low, but the equity is really heavy. Or the salary is higher and there's no equity, but maybe there's a pension. Or, our bonus levels are a little bit higher because we're a pay for performance kind of company. You have to establish what is most important to you. What kind of risk taker are you? If you really believe in a company, maybe you're willing to accept less on the salary and more on equity. Maybe your personal development is really important, and depending on your stage of career, getting your MBA is important, and them paying for that is part of that. Or, you executive coaching, or, personal development in that respect, or you want support being part of chief, being part of other communities from your company. So these are all negotiable items. And at different stages in your life, you might put more weight on something. I'll give you an example. My daughter just accepted her first job at college, and she had several job offers, but she took the lower paying one because of the opportunity and the experience. But as she, gets her feet wet, and 6 months in, we're going to have a conversation about how does she then talk to her leaders about her growth, feedback, and her package, which might include personal development. Like, MBA is important to her at some stage. Well, if they were to pay for her MBA, that doesn't look like such a big gap between
No.
what she said no to and what she said yes to. Or, there's things like company cars. I've never had to pay for a car. I've always been very fortunate, and I've worked in automotive, but a lot of companies, sales companies, pharma, a lot of companies pay for your car insurance and gas. That is a lot of money out of pocket every month that you don't have to spend after tax. So there are so many levers, and I think understanding the depth of, talk to me about how it works inside your organization, what you stand for, and that's a better baseline than I want to get paid 200,000.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not always about the numbers. And that's what I tell my clients. It's not always about the salary. It's about the package. It's the total rewards that you come away from.
Yeah, healthcare. Stephanie, in my entire career, I have not had one person ever ask me for the breakdown of the benefits costs.
Right.
Not one. That's a lot of people I've interviewed, and made offers to. I send it anyway, but in the offer stage, not one person ever asked for it. So you could be accepting a role with a increase of 20% and you just threw that money away because we have crappy healthcare benefits that are more out of pocket for you. So of course this is dependent on what country you live in and whether you have socialized benefits or not. The US, it's not, and you pay out of pocket a lot. And you could also be getting more because their healthcare benefits are really low or really positive, for you. So yeah, there's so many things to talk about when it comes to compensation, but people are so excited also, I got the offer, and then they don't like, they get nervous to talk through, the next steps. I see it as a business discussion. I see it as a leadership tool. If I'm interviewing you for a sales role, customer
Yes.
care role, any kind of leadership role, anytime you are negotiating on behalf of my company, I better know how you're going to negotiate. I want
Right.
to see, are you a guns a-blazing kind of gal, or are you negotiating appropriately? Are you like, shooting first, and you might not I might not want you in my company if that's how you behave. So these are really important factors to think about. It's all part of the process of building, connecting, and building a relationship.
Right. So let's back up. Where do most professionals and leaders go wrong when they're trying to negotiate? What are some red flags that you've seen in your experience?
They are too emotional, would be number one. They make it all about them. They make it too personal, as opposed to making it a win-win. Um, I think they lack confidence. And when you lack confidence, you can feel it. You can really see it on the other end. And I think the biggest mistake people make is that they don't know their worth. They don't know their value. And then lastly, I would say they haven't done their homework on what the market is actually paying. What are other people in my function at my level making? And then I said lastly, but there's one more. They talk in pure numbers as opposed to ranges, and then they don't talk beyond salary. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, I think having confidence comes from doing your homework. It comes from practicing. It certainly comes from having someone to support you, like you or me, having someone in your corner that is helping script it for you and helping you have a more comfortable conversation around it. And then silence is something people don't realize is actually a really important tool because it's so awkward. So, when you say something like, well, based on my market research and my years of experience, the range that I've seen on the market and the other companies I'm talking with is between 200 and 300,000. And I would see myself at the high end of that range. And then pause and smile and wait for them to fill in that dead space, as awkward as it is, and lean into the camera if you're on, if you're on Zoom. Really own it in a really beautiful way. It's huge, huge. Practice it on video. Like keep practicing it so that you feel comfortable.
I love that you said that because it's true. I've coached my clients on that pause, that silence, because we want to validate immediately why we deserve it, and we don't have to. You've already gone through the interview resume, or I'm sorry, the interview process. They've seen your resume. They know what you can do. That's why they've made the offer, and that awkward pause at the end can be very, very difficult.
Yes. Oh, and one last thing that just triggered for me, triggered in a positive way, as a reminder, when they're making you the offer, they want you.
Right.
Having sat on that side of the table, the manager is like, KL, you do whatever you can to get this person to close, whatever it takes, which means negotiation because they want you are their number one candidate. Believe me when I say the race is usually not so close between candidate A and candidate B. There's always a clear winner. So if they have to go to candidate B, it would be a default and okay, but they want candidate A. They chose you for a reason. So please remember that. That is so important.
And that's true. I recently had a client interview, and come to find out she's waiting for an offer because they told her, "You're the only one we interviewed. You were the only one that stood out amongst the resumes." And so you don't have to worry about competition, especially they know you're qualified once you are interviewing, and they want you the minute they give you that offer. That's the confidence builder right there,
Yeah, and
right? Knowing that.
she is in the driver's seat of that conversation.
Yes, she is.
They
Yes, she
did
is.
definitely not do themselves any favors. So I hope
Nope.
she's ready to negotiate.
Yeah, we're just waiting on the offer. Okay, earlier you talked about a win-win. So what does that look like in a negotiation conversation?
Um, well, first of all, I think a lot of people think about negotiation, and I thought this, in my early days as well, as I saw lawyers. The only negotiation I ever was part of was, watching legal programs or thinking about a lawyer, and there's a winner and a loser. There's a prosecutor and defendant, and only one can win. And so I think there's an aggressiveness, or in my mind, there was always a little bit of a, yeah, aggressiveness is the word that I would use to negotiation. So creating a win-win is really having a dialogue, having a connection, building a relationship, to talk about like what's in it for me, what's in it for you. So, when we can connect on values and we can connect on what's really important to me, that has meaning. And that is, and if they, and on their side, if they're saying, like, this is as far as we can go, or, it's important to us that we have pay consistency across levels, which is why we can't go more on the bonus percentage. So like having clarity and having transparency and having an honest discussion about what's important to you, what your values are, um, and the why behind it is really important. I mean, I'm not suggesting you go in and say, well, I just bought a house and therefore that's why I need more money. It's more about, listen, I'm excited, think about it from a promotional standpoint. Let's say we're talking about a negotiation inside your company. And you're talking with your leaders about growth and your contributions, and bring in facts, bring in your impact. And you do it in a way that also creates positive energy, and that, my growth equals greater growth for the company, and my growth also means financial growth, and I'd love to understand that. So having more of a dialogue around it versus, this is my last offer. Like, it's just not how it works.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked a lot about negotiating for a job. What if you're internal, you've had a role for a while, and it's time to talk about a raise or maybe even a promotion? What do conversations look like in that regard? What are your tips to negotiating either one of those items, whether it's a raise or a promotion with your current manager?
So first of all, these are conversations you should be guiding, leading, and having on a regular basis. Not too often, I'd say quarterly, twice a year, that you proactively, if you don't already have weekly one-on-ones with your boss, put those on the calendar, 30-minute check-in. This is what's happening. Here's where I need you. Here are the roadblocks. Boom. Many leaders don't do that proactively, so you should. Once a quarter or twice a year, I recommend you do a 1-hour meeting that is specifically designed for feedback, two-way feedback. You send an agenda in advance and you talk about growth, which includes feedback, right? And future project opportunities, growth, career growth, personal growth, things that are important to me, things that you're seeing as my leader that you would like to see more of or less of, start, stop, continue. And in that conversation is when you also talk about your financial growth. And you could bring in something like, listen, I've done a little bit of market research on my role on the market and where I fall compared to the market research that I found. And I'd love to talk about that with you. I'm looking to grow and to continue to grow my career and also financially grow. Here's the data that I found. Here's where I am. And I'd love to talk about how we close that gap. And if it's a promotion, then obviously you're talking about, listen, in any event, in those conversations, you should be talking about your network. Who are you networking with? Who do I need to know? Who in your network, do I need to meet? Who are the influencers in the organization that you think would be helpful for me to learn from and grow from? So these are proactive conversations that help you grow, which in the end, of course, helps the company grow. So positioning it and you being in charge of it, do not wait for your leader. There are companies like Netflix as an example where they also encourage their people to take calls from recruiters. So I don't hate this idea, but I love, if you were to say, listen, recruiters call me every once in a while and I take those calls so that I can get a pulse on the market and also get a pulse on where I am compensation wise and what's happening out there. And, I've had a couple of calls and they've been calling me about VP level or, a level up from where you are. And it's interesting for me. And of course, career growth is important to me. Talk to me about what do I need to do here inside the organization that I'm not doing today that you think would be helpful for me to think about that next step? What are your thoughts on me in that next step? And I'd love to map that out with you so that I can take the right steps towards moving in that direction.
And I love that because not everybody wants to grow. I have worked with many clients that love what they do. They don't want to be a manager. They don't want to climb the ladder. They don't want to move up. So if you're having those proactive conversations, you're doing yourself a favor because you're letting them know, hey, I'll take on more. I want to grow. I want to learn. It's very proactive because many employees are very happy with what they're doing.
Oh, you just opened something else so interesting. And I don't talk about this very often, but in that case, I like also the idea in that conversation to say, hey, listen, I don't know where I stand compared to other people at my level inside the organization. Is there a way you could also help me know? I'm assuming you have some pay bands. Where do I fit? Am I at the mid level? Because I'm so happy where I am, you're happy with the work that I'm doing. I don't necessarily need to be the next CEO, but I'd love to continue to grow in my role. So let's grow with projects and with new opportunities and new ideas and challenges, but I also want to grow financially. So how could we map that out? And is there an opportunity for you to share? Also, I'd love to know, where do I stand compared to the men in the company? Is equity analysis something that the company does on a regular basis? That would be also really interesting for me to know. And then I'd love to talk beyond base salary. I'm also really interested in going back to school. I'm really interested in personal development. I'm interested in learning about something completely new with the company. Sponsor that for me. So there's, again, more conversations that are around money, but I love that opportunity for you to ask, where do I stand? If they're not already transparent with you, which sadly most companies are not.
They're not thinking about it. Mm-hmm.
And equity analysis, probably happening less and less. I think it was happening more and more during the pandemic. But today I'm going to guess that it's not always, and it depends on the size of the company. For smaller companies, they probably are not, doing that data analysis on a regular basis. So, and your boss, if he or she hasn't done it, which they should do once a year for bonus time, but if your boss hasn't done that exercise, it's a really good exercise for them to also go, you have some gaps to fill. So I love that. I love that as part of the conversation.
Right? Absolutely. So, what are some questions you ask your clients to help them shift their mindset from self-worth, value? How do you guide them in that direction to start thinking in that mindset?
Well, first of all, we unpack what their relationship is to money today. And then we try to understand why not you, right? And we understand also what your financial goals are. So I want to know what are you working towards? And obviously what's been getting in your way. And then we focus really primarily on beyond the mindset, building their confidence and preparation. So I do the homework for them and really prepping them so they walk in feeling really, really confident. And yeah, I think there's a lot that goes into it. But I think for most of my clients, having that preparation is the biggest one. And practicing, we do a lot of videos back and forth, voice notes back and forth, so that they practice the conversation.
Oh, that's amazing. So, if our listeners want to connect with you or learn more about how to work with you, how should they find you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn primarily. That's where you'll find me the most. You have my name, so you can search me. I'm also on Instagram. It's the KL Shaw. And I'm on YouTube. I'm all the places. And I think YouTube is the salary bump. I'm on TikTok. I have a podcast and I also have a TV show that I just took over as the broadcaster for. It's on Saturday mornings. It's called Job Hunt New York. If you're not in the tri-state area, you can't watch it, but I do in my bio have a link to the website so you can watch it. And it's support for anybody who wants to grow in their career.
Oh, that's amazing. I didn't know about your TV show. Oh,
Yeah,
I'll have to go check out that link. I will definitely
thank
do that.
you. Thank you so much.
Well, this was an incredible conversation with Keri-Lynne Shaw. I hope you're walking away with not just insights, but action steps to feel ready to take. Whether it's negotiating your next offer, asking for a raise, or simply reframing how you see your value, remember, your career is yours to shape. So until next time, keep going, keep growing, and don't forget you're worthy of the career and the compensation you desire. Take care, everyone.